what is postmodernism? How would you define it? Maybe Isaac, you can start.
Well, this is a huge thing. Actually, I don't know if Joel would be on the same page with me because we're coming at it from very different angles. I'm coming at it as a philosopher, whereas Joel is coming at it from much broader kind of cultural, literary, artistic, film context. So I think postmodernism means different things to different people in some ways. I think there is a kind of a core to the idea, and I think that it's kind of like this idea of, in some ways, a repudiation of modernism, right? So, I mean, postmodernism is post something, right? Modernism, right? And so kind of one way to define postmodernism is to look at what modernism is. And at least within philosophy, modernism was this movement from the 1600s up to probably the 20th century, which really put a strong emphasis on the role of reason, that we as humans could use reason alone to get to truth. And it was kind of in response to the Middle Ages, against Aristotle's philosophy, but also his science, as well as the medieval Catholicism that like the Reformation was kind of reacting against. But modernism was kind of reacting against even the Reformation, saying, okay, let's just throw out the Bible as well and say, let's just start from ground zero with reason alone and the results of science. And we can achieve all forms of objective knowledge, all forms of development of society, progress in every direction using reason alone, right? So if that's what modernism is, postmodernism is kind of a reaction against that. Right. So I often see like the history of ideas as like these pendulum swings that go from one extreme and then reaction against that extreme to go to the opposite extreme. And so if modernism is characterized in this deep kind of faith and commitment to reason being kind of omni-capable, right, then postmodernism is kind of like a critique of that, saying reason is actually quite limited. And in fact, at least from the philosophical kind of versions of postmodernism, is basically a kind of skepticism that says that there actually is no objective truth that we can know, right? It's kind of like the opposite kind of stance with regard to reason as modernism is. So at least that's at the core of what postmodernism is with regard to what it's reacting against in terms of the forms of modernism that we saw just a few centuries ago.
Joel, I wonder if you could expand on what Isaac was talking about, maybe in how postmodernism looks like more broadly in culture and the arts and theology. And like, what is it? What is this thing that we're calling postmodernism? What's the core of it?
Yeah, so I'm coming at this from, a theological, philosophical, and more of an aesthetic or the arts level, and specifically in film, but just literature, visual art. And there's a hesitancy or a skepticism towards meta-narrative. So this larger story, capital S story, to try to make sense of the world. That postmodernism is looking at that and with a sense of caution, a sense of the idea that there is some sort of objective truth, capital T, that maybe that's some sort of power play or power game, or maybe that, how do you really know that you actually, have the corner market on truth? And so it's a resistance of that, and then almost a parody or critique of that as well. So there's a sense of humor, I think, behind it, a sense of willingness to push at boundaries, to deconstruct things and pull them apart and try and understand what's going on underneath, and also kind of expose what folks might have thought was so secure and so rigid, and they could build a foundation upon to show that the foundations are really a bit more shaky than that.